In the Black Girls McCoy, and I wanted to give a shout out to Ring IQ Boxing, and remember to tune in to the motherfucking relay.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. It appears that America's own Zarinia Mccoy, young up-and-comer, is going to be returning to action later on next month on the 24th against Paulina Cardona, south of the border.
En la Plaza Sendera Colima y Colima en México. Ay, Dios mío.
Zarinia Mccoy, a fighter we often talk about here on the channel. I always take my hat off to Zarinia Mccoy as a fighter and Zarinia Mccoy's team, her handlers. They do a very good job of keeping this young fighter busy, this young fighter active. Very few, if any, gaps in activity for Zarinia Mccoy. She's going to be returning to action on this card. You may notice the name of former world title challenger Ronald the Thrill Gavril. That's right, it appears that Ronald is going to be returning to action on this same card. Haven't seen that guy in a while. That's the same Ronald Gavril that knocked David Benavidez on his ass, sat him on his back pocket. Off a short left hook, he's going to be fighting on this card, as will Zarinia Mccoy, sporting a professional record of 9 wins, 1 loss, with no draws, 2 knockouts. That lone defeat, it's contentious, it's controversial, to say the least. Yeah, I saw that fight. It didn't look like Zarinia Mccoy lost to me. That was the Eloisa Zaraga fight that took place earlier this year in May. I didn't see what, if anything, Eloisa did to earn a points decision in that match. The judges gave it to her, and I didn't agree with them. Zarinia Mccoy has since gotten herself back in the winner's bracket this past July against Basilia Mancilla. Won a split decision over Basilia. She's now fighting Paulina Cardona. And the interesting part of this story is that this is being billed as a lightweight contest. Lightweight, that's 135 pounds. That's where Katie Taylor reigns as that division's undisputed champion. Terry Harper was campaigning as a lightweight not that long ago. She has since decided to move up to junior middleweight. And Zarinia Mccoy, she's going to be fighting in the lightweight division very soon. Zarinia Mccoy, who, at least in the past, has campaigned as low as super flyweight and bantamweight. This is a bit of a jump. She's going to be taking on seasoned journeywoman Paulina Cardona, who is coming right off of 3 consecutive losses. 1 loss to Prisca Vicot, familiar fighter Prisca, Kinga Magyar, and America's own unbeaten up-and-comer Tiaria Brown. Paulina retired in her corner after 3 rounds after facing Tiaria this past July. She's going to be facing Zarinia Mccoy next month. Zarinia, who's not an artillery fighter. She's not a particularly heavy-handed fighter. She's a young fighter, only 21 years old, only 2 professional knockouts on her professional record so far. Zarinia Mccoy is your, according to Hoyle, pure boxer. Your finesse fighting kind of outside stick and move jabber. Mover. We all know what a pure boxer's calling card is. Where some other fighters go for activity and volume and aggression, the pure boxer's calling card is efficiency and defense. They don't throw a lot of punches, but what they do throw, it does land. Pure boxers are characteristically accurate. Zarinia Mccoy aspires to display that accuracy against Paulina Cardona, who sports a professional record of 25 wins, 27 losses, 7 draws, 11 knockouts, having been knocked out 10 times. It's a developmental fight, which I have no problem with, given Zarinia Mccoy's age. Don't forget, this is a fighter that's only 21 years old. She's got all the time in the world to develop, and it behooves her and her team to use that time to her advantage. She shouldn't be in any rush to compete for any major alphabet titles when time is already very much on her side. I take no issue with this fight, lest we forget the cautionary tale of Amy Timlin. A pure boxer like Zarinia Mccoy is a pure boxer. Last year, she took on experienced veteran Mary Romero, and she quickly found out that she was in over her head, and she wasn't ready to be in there with somebody like that. And Amy Timlin, at least back then, she was a pure boxer the same way that Zarinia Mccoy was a pure boxer. Hit and not get hit, stick and move, staying on the outside. Amy Timlin very recently returned to action, and she showed a little bit more spite, a little bit more mean streak, a little bit more moxie, whereas Zarinia still is your, according to Hoyle, hit and not get hit, stick and move, staying on the outside, pure boxer. This being a lightweight contest, and Zarinia not being big on power, though being 11 years younger than Paulina, Zarinia Mccoy on points is the safe bet, though there is room for things to get interesting because this is a lightweight contest, you understand. Zarinia Mccoy has campaigned as low as super flyweight and bantamweight. This is several divisions north at lightweight. This is a lightweight contest, and Zarinia Mccoy, skilled boxer that she might be, she's not big on power. Paulina Cardova is a journeywoman, she is, with losses in the double digits, and she does have an upside-down record, and she has been knocked out 10 times. But boxing does have a funny way of surprising you at times, doesn't it? Ultimately, Zarinia Mccoy on points is the logical pick, and I'm just wondering if this is the beginning of an extended stay, an extended campaign at 135 pounds. Look for this later on next month on the 24th, south of the border. In men's heavyweight news, some comments from the reigning WBC heavyweight champion, Tyson Fury, who is still said to be in retirement. He says, when Alexander Usyk was an amateur boxer, sucking his mother's nipples, I was British heavyweight champion. He was boxing at 75 kgs, 165 pounds. This is why I call him a middleweight. He got stopped by Matvey Korobov as a middleweight.
And that was many, many years ago when Alexander Usyk was a younger man, a much younger man, campaigning as a middleweight.
Tyson Fury knows that just as much as I or you. So what exactly is he aspiring to do by making these short-sighted comments, these quips?
Denigrating Alexander Usyk.
Is he trying to get into Alexander's head? Because I don't think that's going to work. Alexander, who post-fight after the Anthony Joshua fight, after Anthony Joshua praised him, Alexander, who was quoted as saying, I don't accept it into my heart because I want to stay a humble person. I don't want pride to grow. The one who brings himself up, the world will make him come down. The one who stays down, the world will bring him up.
Tyson Fury's known for his banter and his mind games.
A lot of people would say that he very much got into Vladimir Klitschko's head ahead of their first fight, Tyson Fury's banter.
He made Vladimir question himself, and in the fight, Vladimir was hesitant to let go of the right hand.
Because he got into his head. Getting into Alexander Usyk's head, Alexander, who is motivated by perhaps very different things than Tyson Fury is, that could prove a lot more difficult. Alexander, on the Anthony Joshua win, stated, this fight was extremely important for my country. The belts are coming back to Ukraine. Ukraine won. The future of my country is we're gonna win. Ukrainians never give up. They always go to the end. Always win. We're gonna win.
Fury's motivated by money.
Which isn't really cause for concern for a prize fighter, a pugilist. They're all in it for money at the end of the day. But some fighters, some pugilists, they are motivated by more than money, more than just money. Alexander made a fuck ton of money this past weekend. He's not strapped for cash.
If he wants Tyson Fury, it's not because he needs the money.
Tyson Fury himself, he says he doesn't need the money either, even though he is motivated by money, and he's made that crystal clear after telling the world that money doesn't matter, that he's a Spartan, not a businessman, that he doesn't care about money.
Tyson, in his own fashion, has once again gone back on his word as he stated quite clearly that this fight for him is just about the money.
He said this Alex Usyk guy, he needs the legendary Gypsy King. I don't need him. I've done what I've done. I'm a legend in the game. He needs me, some foreigner who no one can say his name.
Why does he keep pointing out that Alexander Usyk's a foreigner?
He's foreign. He's a fucking foreigner. And what? You were a foreigner in this country. Nobody gave you shtick about it.
Well, Deontay Wilder did a little bit.
Yeah, but Deontay Wilder's an idiot. For a guy who used to moan about how he was mistreated for being a traveler, being a gypsy, it's strange to hear Tyson Fury constantly point out that Usyk is a foreigner. Are we supposed to look at him as being less than because he's a foreigner? Is that what you're aiming for?
Is that what you're getting at?
Tyson Fury, who said all of the pound-for-pound legendary status, I don't rate him. He will get a good hiding. Let me tell you, I could beat Usyk on a week's training because he's a middleweight. I'll put my fist right through him. It's an easy fight, and yet, outside of the dominance that he exhibited over Deontay Wilder.
And he did look dominant against Deontay Wilder. He did look dominant against Dillian White more recently.
I know, he knocked the both of those guys out, and I understand that. But neither Deontay Wilder, or Dillian White for that matter, have the pedigree, the amateur pedigree, and the professional exploits of an Alexander Usyk. Whatever you did to those guys has absolutely nothing to do with him because he's nothing like those guys.
Those guys don't fight nothing alike. They ain't built nothing alike.
Those were good victories for Tyson Fury. Signature victories. All of them. The 2 victories over Deontay Wilder and stopping Dillian White off a short uppercut mid-range to inside. But I do think that Alexander Usyk is a far cry from those fighters. The only thing those fighters have on Alexander Usyk is size. not skill, not passion, and not pedigree.
Alexander is a more skilled fighter than Deontay Wilder by far. All Wilder has is power.
Size and power, that's it. Not pedigree and not fundamental skills. Tyson Fury knew that, which is why Tyson Fury knew to force Wilder on his back foot to offset his power and smother him. Crowd him, wear him out.
Deontay Wilder needs to set his feet to generate power, and if you force him onto his back foot, he can't do it.
Deontay Wilder ain't got feet like Alexander Usyk, and he's not a southpaw. He's a one-handed fighter, a one-handed orthodox fighter. So with Usyk, it's an entirely different kettle of fish, and the same applies to Dillian White. God bless him, he's a sucker for an uppercut. Every time he's ever been knocked out, it's been by that same punch. The uppercut, he just can't see it coming. That ain't Usyk.
Usyk is a very different fighter than anybody that Tyson Fury's ever fought.
Tyson Fury, who puts pressure on the Usyk fight being made, saying, to all these suitors out there who want to make the fight, I'm going to give you all 7 days, 6 now, until the 1st of September to come up with the money. If not, thank you very much. It's been a blast. I'm retired. Guys, I forgot to say,
All offers submitted must be to my lawyer, Robert Davis.
in writing, with proof of funds, so let the games begin. Unlikely that it will be made so quickly, but no doubt talks are underway. Tyson Fury expects the powers that be to come up with $500 million in 6 or 7 days' time.
Not likely. He's negotiating. He's asking for an exorbitant dollar amount, but he doesn't actually expect to get it.
He's starting off high on the premise that the powers that be, whoever they are, whether it's the Saudis or someone else, he's starting off high with the intention of meeting these suitors in the middle. He doesn't actually expect to get $500 million out of this thing, but maybe 100, 150.
That's not half of $500 million.
No, but maybe what Tyson Fury's thinking is he can get 150 million out of this, or maybe 200 million. Even though that does seem crunchy, that might be what he's shooting for. The split between the two champions is set to be a 50-50 split.
That means whatever the size of the pot, whether it's a $100 million pot or a $200 million pot, both boys get half.
What exact dollar amount Tyson Fury's really shooting for? Your guess is as good as mine, because he can't seriously expect anybody to put up $500 million just for him to take home. In all likelihood, he's starting off high.
It's a negotiation tactic. He's leveraging his own retirement as a bargaining chip.
In order to force the powers that be and any potential suitors to bargain. What is it worth to them to have Tyson Fury come out of retirement for this fight? Because according to Tyson Fury, he's not strapped for cash and he's happily retired.
I think a few things about this entire situation, and one of them is that this is all a strategy from Tyson Fury.
That's what I think about that. And as far as Tyson Fury's quips and shots he's taking at Alexander Usyk, this is a different situation because there's a language barrier between Alexander Usyk and Tyson Fury. So Tyson Fury's banter might very well fall on deaf ears, as Alexander Usyk is a very different fighter and a very different man to the kind of men that Tyson Fury has fought in the past. Alexander Usyk isn't motivated by a check per se, not just a check. He's already made more money off this past weekend's fight than Tyson Fury made in his last 3 fights.
$75 million in one fight, $75 million in one night.
Alexander Usyk is not an aging and complacent champion the same way that Vladimir Klitschko was, and he's not a mentally fragile.
He's not a mental midget like Deontay Wilder with a chip on his shoulder.
Drinking his own Kool-Aid and diluting his own mind. Deluded is what Deontay Wilder is, and that's not Alexander Usyk. Alexander is grounded. He won't accept the praise from Anthony Joshua as to avoid having a chip on his shoulder, as to avoid drinking his own Kool-Aid. This is a centered individual that is motivated by different things than those fighters, motivated by different things than Tyson Fury. So at least psychologically, this is a very different situation to any situation Fury's been in with any fighter that he's faced before. And this guy, getting in his head, might prove a lot more difficult.
You can shoot off at the mouth as much as you like. This guy probably doesn't understand most of what you're saying anyway.
And finally, in men's bantamweight news, now, Inoue, ESPN's number 2 pound-for-pound fighter, agrees to title bout with Paul Butler, sources say.
You know, when Top Rank signed this guy, I expected them to do more with him here stateside.
Outside of knocking out Jason Maloney and Michael Dasmariñas, it doesn't really feel like all that much came out of that relationship. Now that he's back in Japan, his career is back on track.
Because, those shows in Japan, those ain't top-ranked shows.
Naoya Inoue and Paul Butler have agreed to terms on an undisputed bantamweight championship fight December 13th in Japan, sources told ESPN. Inoue, a star boxer in Japan who is ESPN's number 2 pound-for-pound boxer, will attempt to unify all 4 belts for the first time in his career. He holds the WBA, WBC, and IBF titles. The winner of the matchup, Inoue, will be heavily favored, will be the first undisputed champion at 118 pounds in nearly 50 years, and the first undisputed champion at 118 pounds in the 4-belt era. The fight is expected to be streamed on ESPN Plus on a Tuesday morning broadcast in the United States.
That's the most that came out of that top-ranked deal.
Doesn't really seem like Inoue himself got all that much out of that top-ranked deal. I don't know if he's getting any additional monies for ESPN Plus showing his fight, but if anybody got something out of that deal, out of that relationship, it was the fight fans, because by way of that relationship, we get to watch his fights, even though they're happening far away from here.
Far abroad in the land of the rising sun, that's what we got out of it.
The 29-year-old, a 3-division champion, appears destined for the Hall of Fame. A unique blend of speed, power punching, and boxing smarts. Now, the monster will have the opportunity to effectively clean out the division with the matchup against Butler. The 33-year-old Englishman claimed the WBO's interim title in April with a decision victory over Jonas Sultan. Butler was twice scheduled to face WBO title holder Jonriel Casimero, but the Filipino withdrew from the bout on both occasions. Following the second cancellation, the WBO
They stripped Casimero.
the fight was scheduled between Jonriel Casimero and Paul Butler, but news broke that Jonriel Casimero had used a sauna over there in the United Kingdom. And ahead of a fight, that's actually a violation. Using a sauna ahead of a fight by way of the BBBOC is illegal.
Jonriel Casimero blew it.
Paul Butler will stand in his place. Paul Butler, the newly crowned WBO bantamweight champion, who has reeled off 8 consecutive wins since 2018. His decision loss to Emmanuel Rodriguez in a title fight. Butler's other defeat also came in a title bout, an 8-round TKO versus Zolani Tete in 2015. Inoue's going to be the betting favorite. I think that goes without saying. He's going to be the wide favorite with the bookies, but you have to take your hat off to Paul Butler because he didn't muck up the situation in all the ways that Jonriel Casimero did. Remember, the initial plan 2 years ago was for Jonriel Casimero to unify titles with Naoya Inoue, and the Casimero people decided to go their own way. They ended up on the PBC side of things, wasted a lot of time doing a lot of nothing over there. They had some fights, none were memorable.
The Guillermo Rigondeaux fight was quite forgettable.
And this was all the byproduct of the COVID-19 pandemic, bringing what was supposed to be Inoue versus Casimero to a screeching halt. The Casimero people should have rode out the situation so that they could see that Inoue fight come into fruition. As it stands, they're out and Butler is in.
Credit to him, because I don't think he stands a chance.
He's a fighter, he's a champion, and he's behaving like one. He's doing what he's got to do.
He deserves respect for that.